Hello, everybody. I've been so busy trying to organize everything for next week that, again, you know how forgetful I am. I forgot to read you at 5 o'clock. When was it supposed to happen? Yesterday. I'm so sorry for if you were waiting for this final chapter to arrive and it didn't. I'm super excited that we're going to be seeing each other on Zoom this week. And then we can have a little chat if you would like to continue reading books like this still at some other moment. But I'll ask you guys when I see you on Zoom. Now, today will be the last time in the last chapter of our Brothers LIonheart book. If you are in room 15, you'll have to come up to room 16 at some point if you want to borrow the book. Make sure that I've got the book available in our classrooms as well, because then you can maybe reread it if you feel like it. So, we are up to chapter 16, the very last chapter of this book. We know that basically the story was finished, remember? Jonathan managed to grab the horn of Katla and march Katla back to Kamanyaka. And then, unfortunately, that horn fell into the Kama Falls. And when Katla discovered that, she was no longer obeying him at all. Let me see. He grasped the rock as if he was a giant. Remember in that picture here, he was trying to put the rock and push it so hard so that it would fall right on top of Katla. And it fell straight on her. And with a scream that could demolish mountains, it says, she fell backwards into Kama Falls. Now let's see how the story finishes. No, Jonathan actually didn't kill Katla. Carm did. Remember? Katla killed Carm as well. In front of our very eyes. We saw it. Now, you might not have remembered, but some time ago, we talked about how there was an old saga about Katla and Carm that they used to scare children with in Nangiala. Now, Katla turned out to be real, and nobody knows whether Carm, who was as wide or as long as the ancient river was wide, was actually real or not. And now it turns out she is. So Carm did, and Katla killed Carm in front of our very eyes. We saw it. No one else but Jonathan and I had seen two monsters from ancient times destroy each other. We saw them fight to their deaths in Kama Falls. When Katla let out that scream and disappeared, at first we could not believe it. It was impossible to believe that she was really gone. Where had she sunk? We saw nothing but whirling foam. Nothing more. No Katla. But then we saw that serpent. He raised his green head out of the foam, and its tail whipped the water. It was terrible. A giant serpent as long as the river is wide, just as Elfrida had said. The sea serpent of Kama Falls that she had heard sagas about when she was small was no more a saga than Katla. He existed there and was a monster as horrible as Katla herself. His head was swaying in all directions, searching, and then he saw Katla, because she floated up out of the depths and was suddenly in the middle of the whirlpools. And the serpent threw himself headlong at her and coiled himself all around her. She spurted her death-dealing fire at him, but he squeezed her so hard that the fire went out in her breast. And then she snapped at him, and he snapped back. They snapped and bit, both of them wanting to kill. I suppose they had longed for this since ancient times. Yes, they snapped and bit like two raging creatures, hurling their terrible bodies at each other in the swirling water. Katla screaming between bites, Carm snapping quite silently, black dragon blood and green serpent blood floating out into the white foam, coloring it dark and sickly. How long did it go on? It seemed to me as if I had stood there on that path for 1,000 years and had never seen anything else but those raging monsters in their ultimate battle. It was a long and terrible battle, but it came to an end at last. A piercing shriek came from Katla, her death cry, and then she was silent. Cam had no head left by then, but his body did not let her go, and they sank together, tightly interwoven down into the depths. And then there was no Katla, no Cam. They had gone as if they had never existed. The foam was white again, and the poisonous monster blood was rinsed away by the mighty waters of Kama Falls, and everything was as before, as it had been since ancient times. We stood gasping there on the path, although it was all over. We could not speak for a long while, but at last Jonathan said, "We must leave, quickly. It'll be dark soon, and I don't want night to fall upon us in Kamanyaka." Poor Grim and Fiala. I don't know how we got them on their feet again, and how we got away. They were so tired they could hardly lift their legs. But we left Carmagnaca and rode for the last time across the bridge. And then the horses could not take one more step. As soon as we had reached the other side of the bridge, they sank down and remained lying, as if they thought, "Now we've helped you enough into Nangiala, and they'll have to do." "We'll make a campfire at our old place," said Jonathan, meaning the cliff where we had been during the thunderstorm, when I had seen Katla for the first time. I still shuddered when I thought about it, and I should have preferred to camp somewhere else, but we just couldn't go on any further now. The horses had to be watered first, before we could settle down for the night. We gave them some, but they didn't want to drink. They were too tired, and I was worried. "Jonathan, there's something peculiar about them," I said. "Do you think they will be better after some sleep?" "Yes, everything will be better when they've had some sleep," said Jonathan. I petted Fjallar, who was lying with his eyes closed. "What a day you've had, poor Fjallar," I said. "But tomorrow everything will be all right, Jonathan says." We built a fire on exactly the same place where we'd had our first one, and the thunderstorm cliff was indeed the best place you could think of for a campfire, if only you could forget that Kamanyaka was so close. Behind us we had high mountain walls, still warm from the sun, and shelter from all winds. In front of us, the precipice fell straight down into Kama Falls, and the side nearest the bridge was also a steep slope down towards a green meadow, which from here looked like a tiny green speck far, far below. We sat by our fire and watched dusk fall over the mountains of the ancient mountains and the river of the ancient rivers. I was tired and thought that I had never lived through such a long, hard day in all my life. From dawn to dusk there had been nothing but blood and fear and death. "There are adventures which shouldn't happen," Jonathan had once said, and we had had more than enough of that kind of day. The day of the battle. It had indeed been long and hard, but now it was at last at an end. Yet our grief was not at an end. I thought about Matthias. I grieved for him so much as we sat there by the fire, and I asked Jonathan, "Jonathan, where do you think Matthias is now?" "He's in Nangilima," said Jonathan. "Nangilima? I've never heard of that," I said. "Yes, you have," said Jonathan. "Don't you remember that morning when I left Cherry Valley and you were so afraid? Don't you remember what I said then? 'If I don't come back, we'll meet in Nangilima,' I said, and that's where Matthias is now." And then he told me about Nangilima. He told me the stories for a long time, as if we had had no time. But now, as he sat there by the fire and talked about Nangilima, it was almost as if he was sitting on the edge of my sofa bed again at home in town. In Nangilima, said Jonathan in that voice he always used when he was telling stories. "It's still the days of campfires and sagas there." "Poor Matthias, so there are adventures there that shouldn't happen," I said. But Jonathan said that it was not in the days of cruel sagas in Nangilima, but days that were happy and full of games. The people played there, well, They worked too, of course, and they helped each other with everything, but they played a lot, and they sang and danced and told stories, he said. Sometimes they would scare the children with terrible, cruel sagas about monsters like Kam and Katla, and about cruel men like Tangle. But afterwards they would just laugh about it. Were you afraid then? They said to the children. They're only stories, things that have never existed. Not here in our valleys, at least. Matthias was happy in Nangilima, Jonathan said. He had an old farm in Apple Valley, the most beautiful farm in the loveliest and greenest of Nangilima's valleys. Soon it will be time to pick the apples in his orchard, said Jonathan. Then we should be there to help him. He's too old to climb ladders. Oh, I almost wish I could go there, I said, as I thought it sounded so pleasant in Nangilima, and I longed to see Matthias again. Do you think so? Said Jonathan. Well, we could live with Matthias at Matthias's farm in Apple Valley in Nangilima. Tell me what it would be like, I said. Oh, it would be fine, said Jonathan. We could ride around the forests and build campfires here and there. If only you knew what the forests round Nangilima valleys were. And deep in the forests lie small, clear lakes. We could build a campfire by a different lake every evening and be away for days and nights and then go back to home to Matthias again. And help him with the apples, I said. But then Sophia and Orva would have to look after Cherry Valley and Wild Rose Valley without you, Jonathan. Well, why not? Said Jonathan. Sophia and Orva don't need me any longer. They can put things right for themselves in their valleys. But then he fell silent and told no more stories. We were silent, both of us, and I was tired and actually not at all happy. It was no comfort to hear about Nangilima, which was so far away from us. Dusk grew deeper and deeper and the mountains blacker and blacker. Great black birds swayed above us and cried so dismally that everything seemed desolate. Karma Falls was thundering away and I was tired of hearing it. It made me remember what I wanted to forget. Sad, sad, everything was, and I'll never be happy again, I thought. I moved closer to Jonathan. He was sitting very still, leaning against the mountain wall, and his face was pale. He looked like a prince in a saga as he sat there, but a pale and exhausted prince. Poor Jonathan. You're not happy either, I thought. Oh, if only I could make you a little happier. And as we were sitting there in silence, Jonathan suddenly said, Rusky, there's something I have to tell you. I was at once afraid, because when he said that, it was always something sad that he would have to tell me. What must you tell me? I said. He stroked my cheek with his forefinger as he always did. Don't be afraid, Rusky. But do you remember what Orva said? A tiny little lick of Katla's fire is enough to paralyze or kill someone. Do you remember him saying that? Yes, but why do you talk about that now? I said. Well, because a little flame of Katla's fire touched me when we fled from her. My heart had been sick all day with sorrow and fear, but I hadn't cried. And now tears came from me almost like a cry. Are you going to die again, Jonathan? I cried. And Jonathan said, No, but that's what I'd like to do, because I'll never be able to move again. I will be paralyzed forever. He explained the cruelty of Katla's fire to me. If it didn't kill, it did something that was much worse. It destroyed something inside so that you would be paralyzed. You did not notice at first, but it came creeping up on you slowly and steadily. I can only move my arms now, he said, and soon I won't even be able to do that. But don't you think it will pass? I said, still crying. No, Rusky, it will never pass, said Jonathan. Only if I could get to Nangilima. If only I could. Only if I could get to Nangilima. Oh, now I understood. He was thinking of leaving me alone again. I knew it. Once he had vanished to Nangilima without me. No, not again, I cried. Not without me. You mustn't disappear to Nangilima without me. Well, do you want to come with me then? He asked. Yes, yes, what do you think? I said. Haven't I told you, wherever you go, I will go? You've said that, and it is a comfort to me, said Jonathan, but it's very difficult to get there. He sat silently for a while, and then he said, do you remember that time when we jumped? That terrible time in the fire, and we jumped down into the yard? I went to Nangiyala then, do you remember? Of course I remember, I said, crying even more. How can you ask? Do you think I haven't remembered it every single moment since? Yes, I know, said Jonathan, stroking my cheek again. And then he said, well, I thought perhaps we could jump again. Down the precipice, right here, down onto that green meadow. But then we'll die, I said. But would we come to Nangilima then? Yes, you can be sure of that, said Jonathan. As soon as we land, we will see the light from Nangilima. We'll see the morning light over Nangilima's valleys. Yes, because it's morning there now. Ha! So we can jump straight into Nangilima, I said, and I laughed for the first time in a long time. Yes, we can, said Jonathan. And as soon as we land, we will see the path to Apple Valley too, right in front of us. And Grim and Fiala are already there waiting for us. We would only have to mount and ride away. And we wouldn't be paralyzed then. You wouldn't be paralyzed, I said. No, then I will be free of all evil and as happy as anything. And you too, Rusky, you will be happy too. The path to Apple Valley goes right through the forest. What do you think? It'll feel like ride. It will feel like riding there in the morning sun. What do you think it will feel like, you and I? Good, I said, and I laughed again. And we'll be in no hurry, said Jonathan. We can bathe in some small lake if we want to. We'd still get to Matthias before he had soup ready. Oh, how glad he'll be when we finally come, I said. But then it felt as if I had received a blow from a club. Grim and Fiala? Already there? How could Jonathan think that we could take them with us to Nangilima? How can you say that they're already waiting for us? They're lying asleep over there. They are not sleeping, my love Rusky. They're dead, from Katla's fire. But what you see over there is only their shells. Believe me, Grim and Fiala are already down on the path to Nangilima, waiting for us. Let's hurry then, I said, so that they don't have to wait too long. And then Jonathan looked at me and smiled a little bit. I can't even hurry, he said. I can't even move from the spot, don't forget. And then I realized what I had to do. Jonathan, I will take you on my back, I said. You did that for me once, and now I will do it for you. That's only fair. Yes, that's fair, said Jonathan. But do you think you dare, Brothers LIonheart? I went over to the precipice and looked down. It was already too dark, and I could hardly see the meadow, but it was so far down that it made you gasp. If we jumped down there, then at least we'd be sure of getting to Nangilima, both of us. We would be sure of that. No one need stay behind alone. No one would lie grieving and crying and being afraid. But it was not we who had to jump. It was I who was to do it. And it was difficult to get to Nangilima, Jonathan had said. And now I knew why. How would I dare? How could I ever dare to jump? Well, if you don't dare now, I thought, then you're a little bit of filth and you'll never be able to do anything else. I went back to Jonathan. I had made up my mind. Yes, I dare, I said. Brave little Rusky, he said. Let's do it then. I want to sit here for a while with you first, I said. Not too long then, said Jonathan. Not only until it's quite dark, I said, so that I can see nothing. And I sat beside him and I held his hand and felt that he was strong and good through and through and that nothing was really dangerous so long as he was there. And then night and darkness fell over Nangiala, over mountains and river and land. And I stood by the precipice with Jonathan holding on to me hard with his arms around my neck. And I felt he was breathing on my ear from behind. He was breathing very calmly, not like me. Jonathan, my brother, Why am I not so brave as you? I couldn't see the precipice below me, but I knew that it was there, and I need only take one step out into the dark, and it would be all over. It would go so quickly. Brusky Lionheart, said Jonathan, are you afraid? No. Yes, I am afraid, but I will do it all the same, Jonathan. I'm doing it now, and then I'll never be again, and then I'll never again be afraid. Never again be afraid. Nangalima. Yes, Jonathan. Yes, I can see the light. I can see the light. You know what, guys? I find this ending always a little bit story. I'm all a little bit emotional now from the story. Isn't that silly? I love this story so much. Guys, I really hope that you guys have enjoyed reading the story as well. And I'm going to find out if you guys want to hear another story. This week, we're going to have Michelle reading a really cool story to us as well. And I will see you guys soon again on Zoom. Bye.